Hello, my aim for this presentation on secondary sources is threefold. I'd like to talk about what secondary sources are in the humanities. I'm going to offer you an annotated bibliography using my voice, and then I have some examples for you of successful theses that incorporate ideas from scholars. Okay, so in the humanities, when you study a film, that film, in this case Roma, is the primary source. It is our primary source. So then what are the secondary sources? Well, the examples we're going to see today, in purple here, the first line, we're going to see published articles that either review or study the film. Some do, some don't make original contributions, but the idea of an academic article is that it should make an original contribution to our understanding of the film. And then listed here, I won't go through the whole list, and you can always refer back to this list if you need to, are examples of what we would call secondary sources that allow us to perform an in-depth analysis, in this case, of a character from Roma. Now, in this round, which is compose an original thesis on your chosen character, you're not going to submit a bibliography, or what's called a works cited, using the MLA style. However, I do want to reassure you that all of these sources can be documented using MLA style. And a bibliography will be required for the poster, for your final poster. But I don't think it makes sense to require one now, because we don't know, how you're going to ultimately develop your poster. Okay, so moving on, I would like to show you, and you have a bibliography that I've provided, and you're free to use any of these sources. You, in fact, don't have to search for your own sources. But I'm just going to take us through some different kinds of sources and what they can do for us, or maybe what they can't do for us, which is always a good way to look at it, right? All right, so these first three, really. These first three, so Dargis, the last name of the author, I believe the last name of this author is Marshall, and then Pakat. These three are what I would call movie reviews, and movie reviews don't contain a thesis. So you're not going to discover an argument, and in that sense, and there's really no theory going on here or any true analysis. However, reading reviews, you can sometimes learn something you didn't know about the making of the film, or how the film was cast, and you may find a kernel of an idea that supports your work. And then moving on, here we have two articles, one by Marcantonio and one by De la Mora. And these two, I would call them, they're both published. Am I saying that correctly? I think they're both published in the Film Quarterly. Yes, they were. And they both are what we would call academic studies, published articles, peer-reviewed. And so what I've done here is I've marked in purple, this is my attempt in purple, highlight to find a thesis in Marcantonio's article. Now, I was not successful. I could not find a thesis. However, in Sergio de la Mora's article, I did find a thesis. And I just want to point out to you how the first sentence, Roma's reception has been hyperbolic, is attention grabbing, is it not? And then as we move down, we don't have to read too much farther until we do find the thesis. Okay, and then finally, this is not an article. In fact, I maybe should add that to the first list that you saw of examples of secondary sources, that a bibliography of everything published on Roma is a secondary source. And in the humanities and other areas of research too, finding a bibliography of this kind is a gold mine. It's considered hitting pay dirt. So this is exciting, and this is available through your library account, but you have it listed there. And that brings me to my two favorite search engines, and then we will go right back to how to write a successful thesis. My two favorite search engines, these are pro tips for you. WorldCat, which you can find in any browser. You should be able to find it through your library too. Sometimes I just start in an internet browser, and I start on WorldCat, and I use the advanced search, because when you're searching, the more specific your terms are, using a first name as well as the last name, putting in the whole title, the fewer results will come up, and then the easier it is to sift through and find the result that's most useful for you. I also like Google Scholar a lot, and those are my two starting places when I'm doing research myself. And finally, so we looked at some secondary sources. You are required not to cite necessarily a secondary source for your original thesis assignment, but the evidence that you have at least read through them will be obvious because you're expected to develop a rich, complex analysis of your chosen character, right? Good. So if that complexity, that richness isn't there, chances are you didn't read any secondary sources. But say you do want to cite an author in the thesis statement itself, which is very doable and can be very successful. So I have two examples here. Agreeing with Sergio de la Mora's assertion, okay, and then going on to add to it, and that addition is your thesis, or refuting or disagreeing with Sergio de la Mora's thesis, and saying something new, or because you've just contradicted Sergio de la Mora, and that is an effective strategy too. And I just want to point out, from a style standpoint, that the first time you cite an author's name, you use the author's full name. And those are my tips for today. I once again look forward to reading your work.